Well, simply put, Oregon's transfer portal class is going to help them compete for a Big Ten title. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. If you have not already, please like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by Monopoly Go. This fast-paced game lets you team up with friends for tournaments to unlock awesome prizes like unique stickers for trading, cool playing pieces, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends. So download Monopoly Go now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. My guy Max Torres with me here today, host of the Ducks Dish podcast. You can also check him out on YouTube over at Scoop Duck. That is where he does writing as well, covering the Ducks. Let's hop into this transfer portal class, Max, because it is the second best transfer portal class in the country, according to 24/7 Sports. And you look up and down and go, I don't think every guy's making an impact this year. Dante Moore, Peyton Woodyard maybe fall into that category. We'll get to Woodyard in a moment, but I think that this class has got not just the icing on the cake. There's some real foundational pieces. You, of course, look at Dillon Gabriel. I love what Oregon has done in the transfer portal, and I don't think without the guys in this class, Oregon would be as much of a Big Ten title contender.
Yeah, that's pretty spot on, Spencer. This group is super impressive on paper, and like you said, it's right on the level of Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin, the portal king, as some people call him out there in Oxford. I made a post over on the Scoop Duck board saying, is Dan Lanning kind of trying to nudge his way into that conversation with this group? Because it's a phenomenal haul, Spencer. You know that as well as I do. And the thing that kind of stands out to me, I hope I'm not beating you to the punch here, is just like the fact that they didn't need a lot of these guys, that they weren't glaring needs. Like, I don't know what's going to happen to Oregon's season if they can't get this guy. Maybe you talk about Dillon Gabriel in that kind of a sense, but I don't think they needed necessarily a lot of these guys. And it's so funny because I feel like there was this narrative that came out from a lot of the national media after the Ducks got Harmon, and it really just sounded like a boo-hoo for USC and Colorado. Like, I literally heard it from, I think, 247 and some other sites. It's like, Dan Lanning didn't need Derek Harmon at Oregon. USC, they really needed him. Colorado, who cares? Do you want Dan Lanning to go to these programs and say, hey, do you guys mind if I take this elite player? I'm sorry, I might be going off a little bit here, but I just cannot.
I don't think that's his concern.
No, it's not. Dan Lanning is trying to win a national championship, and he doesn't care who's in his way. And that's exactly how I want my head coach to operate, and that's how I would operate if I was a head coach. But I'm not. I just talk about the Ducks like every day.
Yeah, it's a hunt or be hunted mentality, and I think it's exactly the right one for Oregon to have because, to your point, that's what the national championship winning and caliber programs are thinking. That's how they are acting. And I love what you brought up about, not everyone was a need. Derek Harmon wasn't a need. It was a move that could have been made. I talked about it on the show, but would I feel like Oregon is some just disaster or have a huge glaring weakness defensively if they hadn't added Derek Harmon? No. But is he better than the guys that would have started or been players had they not landed the Michigan State transfer? Yeah, probably. I mean, we don't necessarily know that, but certainly the staff feels that way. And, if you look at, think about it on a scale of 1 to 10 for every position. If you were to grade, what the starters look like for the Ducks at each position, I think they went from a number of 7 out of 10s to 8 or 9 out of 10s. I think the depth in that defensive line room, yeah, it could have been probably a 6 or 7 out of 10, and be solid. But with Harmon there headlining the group, that's an all-conference NFL caliber guy. That's going to make it an 8 or a 9 or a 10 out of 10. I think this Oregon defensive line is absolutely loaded. Heck, I think you could look at Jabbar Muhammad is another perfect example of this, or Cam Alexander. Alexander in the secondary coming over from UTSA. He was a highly coveted transfer target, 4-star transfer according to 24/7 Sports, All-American Conference performer last year with the Roadrunners, meep. And I think that you look at those two guys coming in, you say, if they hadn't arrived, you would still have the number one JUCO corner in Sione Laulea. You'd have an all-conference guy and multi-year starter in Jaleel Florence coming back in the secondary. You'd have Nico Reed, who's a multi-year power 4 star. It's not like the secondary would be full of guys who, can't play, and we still don't know what someone like Roderick Pleasant can do. And a bunch of other names in that room. So I think that's where Oregon is at with this transfer portal class and why it's so exciting, because there are players that want to come to Oregon and say, hey, I might be able to get more snaps elsewhere. Like Cam Alexander's going to have to fight for playing time. He could have gone somewhere else to a Power 4 school and been their number 1 corner most likely. Instead, he's probably going to be number 3 or 4. But that's why this portal class is so great for the Ducks. It gives them high-end talent and depth.
And I was talking about this on my show yesterday or 2 days ago with Travis Rookle, just about how this might be a better defensive line this year than last year, which Travis was super confident about that. And I was like, is it? I don't know. Maybe I need to do a little bit more of my research. But for Oregon, for us to be sitting here even considering that, Spencer, is pretty wild, considering the caliber and experience of the players that the Ducks lost from a year ago. But I think this class is really special because you address some needs, but you also add some cherry on top with a couple of these guys like Harmon and Woodyard over the weekend. And I'm really excited to see kind of what they can do and how they can slot in here, because you have a good mixture of returners. It's not like you're taking the Colorado approach and just revamping the entire roster and solely relying on the transfer portal. That's right. Exactly what's happening in Boulder, whatever, let's just call it what it is. But Dan Lanning struck a very important balance between the high school rankings and the transfer portal rankings. Top 5 class, best in school history on the high school rankings, and then now one of, if not the best transfer portal class in the entire country. So it's a special season, I think, brewing in Eugene for Dan Lanning and the Ducks. And I think that them bringing in these players, the caliber and the amount, really shows that they're all in for this year. And it's funny to say, because you kind of felt like they were all in last year with Bo Nix, who ended up a Heisman finalist, but obviously they came up short. The Ducks did against Washington 2 times, and that sucks if you're a Duck fan, but that's the reality. So now Dan Lanning's doing what he can to make sure that doesn't happen again against any of these teams on the schedule.
Yeah, I talked yesterday on the show about how it feels like the staff is sending a very clear message of we're all in. This is a year we're pushing, get everyone and everything. Yeah, most people would think of it as a poker move. I think it, of course, is Jeopardy James Holzhauer all in with his daily double wagers. I don't know if anybody out there watches Jeopardy. If you do, let me know, because I'm a huge fan. Anyway, but it definitely feels that way because they're going to get guys like Harmon and Woodyard, who we'll talk about here in a moment, and just making all of these additions that are not just good players, but highly touted recruits. Jabbar Muhammad is an NFL caliber guy. Texas was after him. Harmon had schools like Colorado, or I think LSU might have been after. I could have that wrong. Big time schools were going after him. Yeah, Ohio State was going after him too. Evan Stewart had a bunch of offers when he hit the portal coming out of Texas A&M. Like these are not just the right fits; they're the highest caliber players you could find at those positions in the portal. Stewart was like the number 5 overall player that is transferred this cycle, according to 24/7 Sports. Peyton Woodyard, though, was the number 115 overall player in the 2024 class. He was at Alabama. He's now with Oregon. Max caught up with him. We'll hear what he has to say after we talk about eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, Max. So you had a chance to catch up. I love the in sync second segment sips right there.
I saw
That
you
wasn't
going
even
for it. I'm
planned.
like, okay.
Wasn't even planned. We're just refreshing ourselves so we can give you the best show possible. Thanks for being tuned in, Max. You caught up with Peyton Woodyard, the Alabama transfer, former commit. I don't know how you think about something like that. He played spring football, hasn't actually played a single game of college football. But what were your takeaways after talking to him?
My takeaways after talking to him was this just really felt like the perfect opportunity for him that he was looking for. And one of the first questions I made sure to ask him, Spencer, was just why he entered the portal. Because you see fans on social media, the keyboard warriors, they want to, drag a guy for making a decision that he thinks is best for him. So that was like the first question I asked. And I was like, I'm not really sure if I'll maybe get an answer on this one because it's kind of a touchy subject. But he told me, the story's on the Scoop Duck, by the way. If you guys want to go read it, that's where you can find it. He said that like originally when I committed to Nick Saban and T-Rob, and I wanted to go get developed by them and everything. And then he wanted to give this new staff a chance. That's why he stayed through the spring to kind of see where the program was going. A move that not everybody would make, Spencer. You saw that Saban retirement and that DeBoer hire, and guys were lining up at the door to leave in Tuscaloosa, which it makes sense too, because like that's the GOAT. But also, I think you would want to give Kalen DeBoer a head shot if you're a player, because he's a pretty darn good head coach. I don't think a lot of Duck fans would like to hear that, but hey, that's just
I don't think there's a single Duck fan that can deny he's a really good head coach, because we all like our guy Dan Lanning, and he's been outcoached by Kalen DeBoer 3 times.
I mean that's the reality of what's happened. I mean, look at the results, but we don't need to go on that too much. Just getting more into this Woodyard interview. It's actually Woodyard. I made sure to ask him that yesterday because I myself had been saying Woodyard, and I'm like, I got to make sure I'm saying this right. But he talked about just the coaching staff, the connections that he had with those guys. He was at Oregon a fair amount as a recruit. He didn't take an official visit to Oregon, so he did get to take that this past weekend before he made his decision. And he told me he looked at it as a business trip. Loves the fit that he has in this defensive scheme, getting to work with Coach Rashad Wadood, who he trained with when he was in high school before Wadood got to Oregon. Kind of fun fact there. And then the fit with Lanning and Hampton. He said Hampton's going to develop me like none other. That was a cool quote. And then working with Tosh, and then how Lanning was on the part of the Saban tree, getting to coach with Coach Smart over at Georgia, where Woodyard was committed before he flipped to Alabama and then ended up at Oregon. I mean, there's so much story we can get into here, Spencer. So I don't want to do it all in one answer. My bad.
No, you're good. That's why I bring you on the show, for that sort of insight. But the other thing I want to ask you about him, Max, is do you see him as starting this year, playing, developing this year, Dante Moore style? Because, I thought that the safety room was one that could have added a transfer, and of course they did. They were in on Jacoby Matthews, who still is not committed anywhere as we record this show on Tuesday morning. But, they of course go with Woodyard instead. Do you think he sees the field in his true freshman season? Because I get the sense that between him, Aaron Flowers, and Tyler Turner, one of them will have to play real, meaningful snaps. And maybe it's Woodyard because, he comes in via the transfer portal, and those guys tend to be added for that reason. But I watched Flowers in the spring game, thought he looked awesome. I mean, ready to play right here, right now. That was my impression of him. And then you have a guy in Tyler Turner who's also a Dan Lanning staff recruit, and they brought him in because they felt like he could play. He's got a year of experience under his belt. So do you think Woodyard is fighting with those guys for playing time, starts over him? How do you see it playing out?
Don't forget about Kingston Lopa or maybe even Solomon Davis in that room. I was told this offseason that Davis made the move from corner to safety, maybe safety / nickel, but that'll be an interesting personnel move to watch here moving forward. But as far as Woodyard and his role for the Ducks, I don't necessarily see him starting. I think that's a bit of a leap for me, especially because I haven't gotten to get eyes on him, in a while. But I think he'll see the field this year. I really do. I think when you look at the 2 deep at safety for Oregon, aside from the starters, the projected starters, right? Kobe Savage, Tyshim Johnson, and Brandon Johnson, that's wide open. That's as wide open as it could get. I think Flowers probably has the fast track to get one of those spots because he enrolled early and he has continued to look really, really good and ready to go. to see the field to some degree. And again, I don't want to say start, but I feel like it's got to be wide open because I've said pretty much throughout the spring and the offseason that the safeties are probably one of my biggest question marks. That I think you could also put O-line depth out there as well. Really solid first group, but like backup tackles, we don't necessarily know.
I don't know. I kind of like the offensive line depth. I think your sixth offensive lineman, just to go on this tangent very briefly, I will try not to let it wander. I think your sixth offensive lineman is Davey Uli, who already has some real game reps. He played, I think he was a guy who threw a key block on Bo Nix's touchdown run against Colorado last year. George Silva was a highly touted JUCO prospect who had a big-time clearing block of Mateo, who we all like, in the spring game on a touchdown run. And then maybe Jaquan McCroy as a true freshman, who's just a mammoth. I don't know how else to describe that guy. He's just gargantuan. They call him Shaq for a reason. I think the O-line depth is, at the very least, decent or solid. And Marcus Harper's probably your backup center, so if Poncho were to get hurt, Harper slides over, Uli probably slides in. That'd be my guess. But I agree that the depth at the safety position, you cannot fill out a two deep of Oregon's safety group and not have a redshirt or true freshman in there. You cannot do it. And the question is which one of those guys ends up emerging.
I completely agree with that point. And just to put a bow on the tangent here with the O-line, I think those guys are intriguing for sure, and they've shown some promise. You mentioned some of the plays from Iuli, and then George Silva seeing the field a bit in his first year with the Ducks. George Silva he's like still super new to football. I think this last year was only his second year around the game. He was actually a basketball guy primarily when he got to the JUCO that he was at in Fullerton. I think it's Fullerton College. So that's just a little bit of the insight that I got from getting to go out and see him. So I'm really excited about him. He's a massive dude. I think he's chiseled his body, and like that dude's technique was so raw before he committed to Oregon. So it's just a little hard for me to take that leap without actually seeing it on tape. But I think he's a promising guy. And then as far as Shaq McCroy, he's a huge body, but I'm not quite sure what he looks like just yet at the college level, much less as a true freshman, because Connerly's a special talent, but even he didn't make that leap that Penei Sewell did and start as a left tackle as a true freshman. So plenty of promise there, but I think I still just need to see a little bit more from those backups before I'm ready to really say that Oregon's O-line depth is where it needs to be.
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see another true freshman start at left tackle again for the Ducks. That's a unique situation there. Wanted to get into a mailbag question here, which is always available to you guys. YouTube comments, X, formerly known as Twitter. You hit me up if you want priority access and all sorts of other perks. Go join the flock over at Subtext. This question came in from Mike. With the addition of new DBs and safeties and the fan base, I had notes written down, thought it was an actual question, and that's how much I prepare for the show. But anyway, Mike asked about whether or not Oregon would add any more transfers. Technically speaking, they can. This is not something that is unavailable to them if they see value, because you can only enter the portal in a certain window. You can come out of it at any time, though. And I would think, Max, Oregon is done in the portal. Could they add anybody else? Could you see any other moves being made?
I think they're done. I think it's kind of a dream for Oregon fans to think that maybe. Well, I don't think that there's anybody in the O-line that I know of in the portal at the O-line spot that Oregon would necessarily want to go after. I think that was kind of the discussion after Woodyard committed was, do you maybe get a guy who is a starting O-lineman at another school that is cool to take a back seat? I don't really think that's where they're at. I think I'm going to be curious to see where Nishad Strother kind of factors into the equation this season, because he's a pretty experienced guy, but didn't really see the field last year. So that's another name that
he had an injury that he dealt with. He transferred in last portal cycle from East Carolina, where he was, I believe, their highest graded offensive lineman, or at least interior guy. And normally those guys go from the American Conference to the Power 4 level because they think they're going to start. And Strother, as you said, barely even saw the field. And I think that's certainly a name to watch. But I don't know that there are really any other holes on this Oregon team, Max. I just look around and go, 2 deep, 3 deep, 4 deep, 2 deep, 2 deep, 3 deep, at basically every position group, including kicker, by the way. I'll get to this more later this week, but want your thoughts before I get you out of here, Max. Grant Metters hit a 49-yard field goal that I think would have been good from 55 to 60. It would have been good from at least 55 in the spring game. Atticus Sappington is the Oregon State transfer who only missed 1 field goal last year for the Beavs. Do you see any other areas where, besides place kicker in clutch moments, where Oregon can improve in the special teams?
Not really. I think that you're in a really good spot there if you're Joe Lorig and the rest of that special teams staff. Admittedly, I don't invest as much of my time in the special teams as the other positions, and I could probably be better about that. But like you said, seeing that 49-yard field goal in the spring game was just like so refreshing because Camden Lewis was good, but I don't think he was as consistent as you wanted your kicker to be. So it's kind of a changing of the guard or a transition era for the Ducks at kicker. And I think it's something to be excited about because we're seeing some signs of early promise. And Duck fans know all too well, you need that kicker because you might lose some games.
You know, Lewis's lack of high-end leg strength wasn't his biggest shortcoming at Oregon. It was making clutch kicks. He made one in 2019 to beat Washington State, but last year you had several times where he could have put a game away, where he could have sent the Washington game to overtime. Couldn't do it. So, I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. But, John, I'll get more into that. I've talked about the kick return game as well, but I'll definitely circle back to that question on the show. For now, we let Max go. Max Torres, Scoop Duck and the Ducks Dish podcast joining me here. Max, thanks as always, my man.
Appreciate you having me on, Spencer. Thanks, man.
Is Oregon basketball being slept on right now? Well, kind of looked that way, at least in the eyes of On3. All right, game off. We got to pause here to talk more about Monopoly Go. I know what you're saying, Spencer. You already talked about that, but there's just so much good stuff in this game. In Monopoly Go, you can team up with friends for timed tournaments where you work together to build up each other's boards. The more you win together, the more awesome prizes you unlock. And there's so much to get. Unique stickers you can trade with friends to complete albums for big prizes, cool new playing pieces to travel the boards with, hilarious emojis for taunting your friends when you smash their buildings or heist their vaults. Plus, Monopoly Go feels new and exciting every day with constantly changing tournaments and challenges. A ton include their own unique mini games like digging for treasure or a robot pachinko machine. There's always new timed events that help you win big, like massive multipliers for everything you win or rent frenzies. There's always something fun to discover in Monopoly Go, so get off the bench, go download it, now free on Google Play or the App Store. Game on. This episode also brought to you by Yahoo Finance. So, for more than 25 years, Yahoo Finance has been the brand behind every great investor. Whether you're a seasoned investor or are looking for that extra guidance, Yahoo Finance gives you all the tools and data you need in one place. They're the #1 finance destination, producing a holistic look at the financial news cycle, including breaking news, original editorial perspectives, analyst ratings, independent research, customizable charts, and so much more. Securely link your brokerage accounts for a unified view of your wealth, including 401k and other investments. A comprehensive perspective is what sets apart great investors, and it's how Yahoo Finance ensures you have the insight to look at your wealth in its entirety. For comprehensive financial news and analysis, visit the brand behind every great investor, yahoofinance.com. The #1 financial destination, yahoofinance.com. That's yahoofinance.com. Is Oregon basketball underrated? Well, at least at the moment, in the eyes of On3, the answer to that question is yes. So, I will not, nor will, until I am presented evidence to the contrary, I am not hopping off the hype train here for Oregon men's basketball. And I think the women are capable of having a bounce back season, but Dana Altman and company have been putting in some real work. And as I record this show, don't know if N'Faly Dante is getting improved. I've said before and still feel, based on what I have read and what I have been told, 60-40, Dante could get another year, and then it would be a true, real Final Four caliber team. But Dana Altman, this past year, I've talked about this before because one of you sent me a note about it, kind of gave, I think, a middle finger to anybody and everybody that said he should be fired, that he shouldn't be the coach anymore, time for a change. Then he won the Pac-12 tournament, got an NCAA tournament victory, and just about got to the Sweet 16. That felt like Dana Altman was not necessarily doing it for the people who doubted him, but was acutely aware of the people that doubted him. Because after one of the Pac-12 tournament games, I believe the final win in the championship game against Colorado, he went over to the Pac-12 network desk and was talking to him with N'Faly Dante and kind of threw a jab out there about, well, you guys all picked us, right? And you did that. Coaches and players can say they don't hear or don't see the noise. They do. They don't engage with it as much as you and I do, perhaps, but they're aware. And Altman had faced questions about his retirement before because it had come up, and he has media availability, and he gets asked questions by guys who are doing their jobs by saying, hey, there's a report out there, you're going to retire. And he said, no, that's ridiculous. Unless they fire me, I'm not going anywhere. And he made it very clear why he's not going anywhere. So On3 recently released their college basketball preseason top 25, didn't have Oregon in it. That's patently absurd, but could be great for the Ducks, because I hope that whoever is managing the social media for Oregon men's basketball shows that to Dana Altman. I want him to see that a pretty major media outlet for college sports doesn't think Oregon is a preseason top 25 team, because that's patently ridiculous. They're a round of 32 team, and they are better and deeper. Like that's all the ingredients. And as they go into the Big Ten, they should be considered one of the favorites. I don't know what Purdue is, going to be able to do without Zach Edey and how they'll bounce back, or Illinois without Terrence Shannon. Like, those are really strong programs, but are they going to be the same caliber team? I don't know, but I know that Oregon doesn't even need full health. They just need to be mostly healthy, and they'll be a very, very good team. And ticked off Dana Altman might be my favorite version of Dana Altman, whether that's in the games and he's still coaching passionately, even though he's in his like late 60s, early 70s. I think that he is 65 years old, and he doesn't act like a 65-year-old. And I think it's great. I think it is great, but I don't know why that particular top 25, maybe it's a troll job, but that would seem curious that you would go and, target a specific fan base like that. So I think that Oregon has made a lot of really high profile moves, and I saw that and thought, why would they not be there? Why would they not be there? Maybe it's because it's content season, and that's just how it came down, but maybe they're just getting overlooked. And if this Oregon team is going to get overlooked, I think that could be an infectious word or an infectious vibe in the best way of, you don't think we're that good? Okay, yeah, we'll show you. So frankly, I hope Oregon keeps flying under the radar, and I hope Dana Altman uses that to motivate these guys. But clearly, if they're all coming together when they could have found other homes in which they'd all be, number one guys, instead they're forming an actual team to go make an NCAA tournament run, I think that's a really, really good sign. Mailbag question came in here from Bud on this squad. Beside men's basketball having end of season success, to what do you attribute this turnaround? Does going into the Big 18, nice, also have any impact on this, both for recruiting and the transfer portal? Well, Oregon's high school recruiting is literally almost non-existent. They had a 4-star top 50 player in Victorious Miller, and they went to get portal guys instead. He decommitted, was released from his national letter of intent. So Oregon didn't actually add but one player from the high school ranks in this cycle, but they have added a handful via the portal. So there's Brandon Angel from Stanford, TJ Bamba from Villanova, formerly Washington State. They added Raheem Moss from Kent State, and they added Des Lindsey from the JUCO ranks, because Dana Altman loves his JUCO guys and has had a lot of success with them over the years, whether that's Chris Duarte or Chris Boucher back in the day. There have been a bevy of others, but Dana loves his JUCO guys. And, last year when he was asked about, or he was talking about they're not being the sort of crowd he was hoping to see against Wisconsin in the NIT. And he said, if it's me, I'll go coach JUCO guys. Those guys are dogs. Like, he loves his JUCO guys, and I'm about it. So I think it's almost entirely, not 100%, but I think 80% of this is the NCAA tournament momentum. I don't think TJ Bamba comes to Oregon if the Ducks lose to Arizona in the Pac-12 tournament semis and go to the NIT. I don't know if they pick up TJ Bamba. I don't know if they can get Brandon Angel if they don't go get, I'm just kind of being partially facetious here, but the point I'm making is that is a huge part. And it was my takeaway at the time of like, this is going to create momentum. And I think that's part of it. I think Tony Stubblefield returning is a part of it as well. He has always been a dynamite recruiter on this Oregon staff. And I think the Ducks have missed that in some ways over the last couple of years. Now, they still pulled in 3 5-stars in the 2023 class. So it's not as if Dana Altman forgot how to recruit. But I think the Stubblefield addition or re-addition and then the NCAA tournament momentum, I think it's those two things together. I don't think it's going to the Big Ten. I don't think that is making a huge impact here. I think that for Oregon, this is about what they're doing as a program. And I've heard the NIL collective is in on men's basketball and giving them the resources that they need to go get these guys. And I don't think Altman has been, super resistant to NIL in the portal. And this year, they're just leaning more heavily into the transfer portal. And I think that's just kind of the way it worked out. And I think another part of that too, and why they've gone and gotten portal guys, is because they already have a crop of young players. Jackson Shellstad and KJ Evans and Mookie Cook, and they're bringing all those guys back. So I think that's another component that you can't overlook as to why they didn't bring in high school guys and went into the portal. And then I think it's just the momentum is just stacked on top of each other over the course of the last several weeks. So I don't think the Big Ten has anything to do with it. I think they could have pulled off these moves if they were still in the Pac-12, but certainly they're putting the rest of the Big Ten on high alert for what's happening in Eugene. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.